With 7 Formula One World Championship races completed, we now have a clearer view of each team, and above all, it has given us a preview of the showdown that has already taken shape. The Barcelona circuit is the greatest showcase of the strengths and weaknesses of Formula One cars. So, at this point in the year, with most teams having brought their most important upgrade packages, and by analyzing what we've seen since the start of the season, it's time to lay out what we consider to be the biggest weaknesses and strengths that each team on the grid shows in their car, and what could change for them in the future, which might help improve their competitiveness or allow them to solve the problems they're experiencing. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the special video on the strengths and weaknesses of the Formula One teams in 2026. Cadillac started the season showing the ability to finish races, and surprisingly, they haven't developed the worst car of the season. That honor goes to Aston Martin, but it's clear that being a new team comes with its weaknesses, and Cadillac tends to show them during races. They suffer from a significant aerodynamic deficit compared to the other cars, and in fact, that's their main problem and the reason why, in terms of competitiveness, they're still several steps behind their rivals. Nevertheless, they have managed to make small steps forward. With the small updates they've made, adding them race by race, their competitiveness has improved, especially with Checo Perez, who is the one getting the most performance out of the car and almost managed to score their first points of the season at the Monaco Grand Prix. However, in terms of pure performance, they are still behind the midfield group, and for this car, race pace is usually problematic. This has been one of the team's biggest drawbacks, since in qualifying they tend to have a bit more leeway, but in the race everything falls apart when the tires start to degrade. They have also reported issues like brake overheating causing reliability failures and spontaneous part failures, such as the suspension that failed with Checo at the Canadian Grand Prix. So, between the brake problems, race pace issues, and the general lack of aerodynamic downforce, we find the reason why this car struggles so much to score points. They have more wind tunnel hours than any rivals, giving them a better chance to fix car issues and find improvements for further progress. Checo pointed out that after the summer break, Cadillac should be in a much better position to get closer to the points, and in general, something that can help the car is that its balance is positive. And it's something that both of their drivers have praised, but that characteristic can easily be ruined by a bad update to the car. So they have a lot of resources to look for solutions to the problems they've shown. The thing is that they need to know how to manage them and implement them in their upgrade packages. Nobody expected Aston Martin to end up as the worst team, but that's the reality. They shocked everyone with a car so bad it couldn't finish races, and even though it can now, it's still far behind the leaders in pace. That's where many people were aiming. That's where Aston Martin was supposed to be fighting this year, but even the challenge against the people from Cadillac, who joined as a new team on the grid, has ended up being too much for them. This team avoided last in the constructors' standings only because Fernando Alonso scored points at the Monaco Grand Prix. And what about the problems Aston Martin has experienced? At first, all the blame was placed on the power unit, which was reported to have dangerous vibrations, poor energy deployment, and, obviously, reliability issues. But after races like Monaco and Barcelona, it became clear that the chassis and suspension are also a huge problem. So, there's no positive aspect for this team, at least with the current car. And there are really few noteworthy things, where I just want you to understand the magnitude of the problem. The team has already completely abandoned this car, and a new single-seater is expected for the Dutch Grand Prix at the latest. They're not spending anything on developing this car, and are saving all their resources for the new specification. So really, not only do they not have a visible advantage, but essentially, to be honest, we don't even know how the new car will perform when they debut it starting from the Dutch Grand Prix, according to some reports. So obviously this new car could significantly change its level or stay exactly as we've seen it so far. But now, their unfortunate position has brought them some benefits. For example, they will receive advantages in the wind tunnel, better than those of all their engine rivals, in addition to a broader financial limit to develop their power unit and, with this, try to make progress in terms of reliability and power. They are also seeking solutions to their multiple problems. But there is really a lot of uncertainty around Aston Martin since we don't know how much the power unit can improve and how their new chassis will perform once they debut it in the upcoming races. Audi debuted as an engine supplier in 2026. While not as challenged as Aston Martin, have the early predictions for Audi proven accurate? Regarding their performance, their biggest drawback so far is definitely the power unit, as it is their greatest weakness in terms of performance and reliability, since it can't reach the level of performance offered by their rivals. Obviously, this has given them engine concessions, which they've already begun using to close the gap. However, the deficit still seems to be present, and it will be difficult for them to reduce it completely, even with 2 concession upgrades. We also have to point out that this configuration they have with the large turbo in their power unit makes starts extremely problematic for their drivers. They are among the teams that lose the most positions at the start. I should also mention they're among the teams that have faced the most reliability issues. So, in summary, the main weakness of this car is in its heart, which fortunately they will be able to modify to try to achieve greater competitiveness in the future. And the fact that their power unit is their biggest weakness is especially painful because the chassis they've introduced has proven to be extremely strong, balanced, and generates good aerodynamic downforce, performing efficiently in all types of corners. So if Audi is able to find performance through the upcoming concession upgrades with the car they have, they should be able to move up on the grid, but we'll have to see how much they can improve their engine's power, because that's where the key to their possible performance jump will be. It's clear that Williams hasn't lived up to expectations this season after last year's strong 5th place finish in the constructors' standings. This is mainly because of the development issues they faced over the winter, resulting in a single-seater that's hard to balance and set up, mostly due to excessive weight. At the season's start, it was claimed this car was up to 20 kilos heavier than its rivals, which showed in these early races with very inconsistent performance. The main weakness of this car is its excess weight, which the team hopes to fix by the Baku Grand Prix. However, it's not just the weight, the chassis is also an issue. The lack of aerodynamics causes this car to have problems in high-speed corners and makes the race pace problematic due to excessive tire wear. Now, solving both problems is not going to be easy. The good thing for them is that any weight they manage to take off the car will automatically translate into performance, but it's not enough to just put the car on a diet. They also need updates that make the car more aerodynamic and give it better grip. And all of that is going to cost a lot of resources and time, so the advantage they have now is that if they manage to drastically reduce the weight, they will be much stronger contenders for points and on a more regular basis. But more than that, it looks difficult, at least in this 2026 season. The Haas team has the best car in the midfield, but as the races have gone by and the car has been updated, it has lost its strength in this group, and now they are several steps behind Racing Bulls and Alpine, the teams that are clearly the force of the midfield group. Their biggest weakness after that update they installed is that the car's setup window has been greatly reduced, so finding that point where it can perform and maximize its capabilities is now much harder to find than it was at the beginning of the season. And that has been exposed in the huge drop in performance that the North American team has experienced. Therefore, the car tends to be driven to a very dangerous limit with which neither Oliver Bergman nor Esteban Ocon feel comfortable. And this has been particularly tough for their rivals, who have managed to take a step forward, while Haas now looks more like a backmarker team than a team that can fight to be the king of the midfield. Their strength is in their reliable Ferrari power unit, and with upcoming chassis improvements, they could see a slight performance boost. But as long as that upgrade they put on the car keeps failing to work as Haas expected, tough and complicated times await them. But at least they had a competitive base car, and if they manage to find their way again so that the car works in a better operating window without having to push it to the limit, Haas can get their fight back on track to lead the midfield group. Racing Bulls has found themselves with a car that, for now, is allowing them to compete against the midfield teams in the fight for supremacy and the 5th position in the constructors' standings. What the team has shown is that their car has good balance and a base that makes it not so difficult to find setups that suit the car and allow their drivers to feel comfortable so they can get the most out of it and score points. And that's their greatest strength, but their weakness lies in the same area because the car works well either in qualifying or in the race, but it rarely performs well in both. That's why we see that sometimes it's hard for them to make it into the final qualifying session, but when they do, they usually stand out in the race with a strong pace. As for their power unit, they have what the FIA says is the strongest engine in terms of speed. While I don't fully agree, it's true this power unit is very competitive, giving the team a big advantage. But at the same time, the reliability problems that they have continued to show have also been a burden that Red Bull itself must solve. But obviously, this ends up affecting the B team, so their strengths are a car with good balance and a competitive power unit, and their weakness is the car's behavior between qualifying and the race, as well as the lack of reliability in the power unit from Red Bull. They are confirming preseason expectations by having the best midfield car, which has earned them valuable points and placed them 5th in the constructors' standings. However, the car is not particularly perfect, in fact, it's far from it, and where this car especially struggles is in finding speed and balance in high-speed corners, where the car doesn't usually behave as well and becomes much more unpredictable. In addition, just like Racing Bulls, their car has problems during qualifying sessions. Although in the race they can show a much better pace, so the overall balance of the car is not exactly as the French would like. A major upgrade package for the Austrian Grand Prix is expected to help reduce much of the problem. Now, in their weakness lies their strength. Their race pace is extremely solid compared to their midfield rivals, and that always gives them the chance to fight for a good haul of points, as the team has done in almost every recent race. So if they manage to improve their high-speed cornering and qualifying strength, their pace should allow them to confidently be the dominant force in the midfield group on the grid. Red Bull is in an uncomfortable position. At the beginning of the year, many expected that their biggest weakness would be in the power unit, since this team is making its debut as an engine manufacturer in 2026. And the difficulty that comes with that, but surprisingly, their power unit is strong, and where they're struggling is with the chassis. And that's what's hurting their competitiveness the most in 2026, which has only allowed the team a single podium finish so far this year. At the beginning of the season, where the car suffered the most was in slow corners, which was what destroyed the pace the most. But as the races have gone by and the car has been updated, this has managed to mitigate that problem a lot, which largely comes from a tremendous overweight issue that the RB22 had, which like other teams is way over the weight limit. Some media even said it was up to 10 kilos overweight. Red Bull, for their part, introduced updates that have managed to mitigate the weight in order to reduce it completely, and an important update is expected to arrive that will bring it down to 0 starting from the Austrian Grand Prix. Although they no longer struggle in slow corners and have performed well in recent races like Canada and Monaco, the car now lacks race pace and can't match its strongest rivals on the grid. This was evident at the Spanish Grand Prix, where throughout the entire race, Max Verstappen was in no man's land, far from Lando Norris's McLaren, but also far enough that no other team posed a threat to his position. A big part of that problem is the excess weight. If Red Bull is able to eliminate it, from that point on the team would have to optimize the aerodynamic package, and with that, they should be much more capable of fighting against the teams ahead of them. But another one of its weaknesses lies in its very strength, and that's that its engine is fast, it's powerful, yes, but it's extremely complex when it comes to starts, which has made it very difficult both for Max Verstappen and for Hajar to maintain their positions at the start of a Grand Prix. And obviously, it's one of the teams that has suffered the most with reliability in this 2026. In addition, the FIA ended up declaring them as having the best engine, and they won't have any advantage to use in the A2O, so their rivals will be able to improve their power units, but they won't be able to do so. So, Red Bull's weaknesses are its excess weight and its difficulties with race pace, as well as poor reliability of the power unit. It all depends on how much things change for this team when the long-awaited upgrade package arrives at the Austrian Grand Prix. The regulatory change hasn't suited McLaren at all, and despite their approach of stopping their 2025 season updates early and quickly focusing on the 2026 car, they don't have a car with which they can consistently fight with Mercedes. They are the only customer team among the top 4, which has been one of their weaknesses this year. Because they don't fully understand the power unit, they can't maximize its potential like the Mercedes team. In addition, they've been greatly affected by reliability issues, which aren't good to begin with when it comes to the German power unit. Unfortunately for this team, they've lost all the strengths they had last year. Their car isn't able to generate the aerodynamic downforce that their rivals do, and their cornering isn't as solid. Most importantly, they've lost their knack for managing the tires and their wear, which was a key strength in the 2025 season. So the biggest weakness McLaren has is that, as a customer team, they're not able to fully understand the power unit they have, and their car has failed to be on par with their rivals. However, the race pace they've shown the problem is that it's been particularly volatile. Although on tracks that don't wear out the tires as much, they usually have the pace to challenge even Mercedes, where in fact they already took a victory from them in the sprint at the Miami Grand Prix. so their strength and competitiveness come alive on circuits that aren't too hot and don't wear out the tires excessively, as we saw in Barcelona, where tire wear put them out of sequence compared to Ferrari and Mercedes. So if stable temperatures and a not-so-abrasive track come together, McLaren shines in terms of competitiveness. So to get the most out of their potential, they need to solve the issue of tire temperature control. If they do, they can get back into the fight to at least get a win this season. Ferrari poses the greatest threat to the current Constructors' and Drivers' Championship leaders, with a couple of very clear strengths and weaknesses which make Ferrari the second strongest team with potential in this 2026. On one hand, their greatest strength is the excellent chassis that the Italian team has managed to develop, which has allowed them to generate a huge amount of aerodynamic downforce, as well as solid performance through both low and high-speed corners, which is particularly where Ferrari excels. But something that was noticeable in Barcelona was that the high temperatures and the abrasive tire wear suited them perfectly, and the car was able to manage it flawlessly. In Barcelona, this allowed Lewis Hamilton to use aggressive strategies since he was always close behind George Russell. So their car is balanced, fast in different types of corners, and its power unit is probably the most reliable of all those currently on the grid. But the big weakness of the Reds shows up when they go full throttle on a straight. And that's because their car is very strong aerodynamically when going through corners, but its aerodynamic efficiency on the straights is lacking. In addition, they have a power deficit in the engine that doesn't allow them to compete against Mercedes more consistently. However, Ferrari has clearly entered the A-Duo, and that will allow them to make modifications to the power unit, which could help reduce the gap with Mercedes. And if they manage to do it, matching the power unit with that of their rivals, with that strong and solid chassis they've been showing, Ferrari is a very serious threat to any team currently on the Formula One grid. Mercedes currently leads both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships, and they've achieved it thanks to a W17 that is an all-rounder, along with a power unit that works wonderfully with their single-seater, offering a fast car on straights and in corners that also preserves tires well during the race. So, if we could sum up all the advantages that Mercedes has with their W17, it would be a great ability to generate aerodynamic downforce, where even on circuits where power isn't so necessary, they're able to shine. A very strong power unit. If we combine the combustion section and the electric section, it gives them a power efficiency and energy capacity that other power units on the grid don't have. And in qualifying, this combination is completely lethal. Additionally, I should add that they have a very strong balance and treat the tires very well, so overall, the W17 is a very strong car with a very powerful engine, but its big weakness in 2026 is two things in particular. The first is that Barcelona showed that high temperatures, even though the car is very strong with tire management, it doesn't hold up in the same way as Ferrari does, which, as I told you, was demonstrated in the last race. Given Lewis Hamilton's current form and tire management in Barcelona, he could have secured victory for the Italian team. Did the virtual safety car come out, which eventually did and gave him a chance to win? But definitely, their biggest weakness is their lack of reliability, and not just them, but all the teams that have used Mercedes power units. Well, both McLaren and Williams, as well as Alpine and obviously themselves, have suffered numerous reliability problems throughout this 2026 season. Mercedes has already had 2 retirements due to battery problems, which is an issue the Germans are already investigating, but the solution could take a long time to arrive. And that, along with Ferrari getting dangerously close to the World Championship leader, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, makes this reliability problem extremely worrying for them. Luckily, they've qualified for concessions and they will also be able to install their upgrade on the power unit. But if reliability keeps hitting them and Ferrari keeps getting closer to their dominant position, Mercedes could find themselves under a lot of pressure from a rival that definitely isn't as far away as they were at the start of the season, and that could ruin things for Mercedes. A coronation that just a few races ago seemed completely clear for the team, whose last championship was in 2021.